Welcome, friends, to this series called Meeting Christianity Again for the First Time. I started a few introductory comments and realized as I got going that my introductory comments may take most of our time today. I'm sorry for that. However, maybe this will be helpful as we move forward, not only for the next 2 weeks, but even beyond that. Let me tell you a story, which I call the parable of the old book. There once was a girl who fell in love with a book. She was a teenager, and in this book, she found all that's magical and wise about life. It was entertaining, engaging. It seemed to have all the wisdom of the ages. She read it and reread it and truly cherished it. Some people knew that she was in love with this book, and they made fun of her for her seeming obsession with this one book. She loved other books too, but this book was not just her favorite, it was more of a passion of hers. As she got a little bit older, she started to hear some criticisms of this book, and she reread it as a young adult and said, why did I ever think this book was like the best book or the only book for me or so wise? And it was just kind of a storybook, and there are so many other books, and there's some things about it that are looking very dated now and don't really speak to my life anymore anyway. And so she put that old book aside. When she was about 50 years old, she found this book again. And by that point, it was kind of dusty and the pages were yellowed and there were lots of dog ears around, and she pulled it off of the shelf and blew the dust off it, opened it again, and read it again. And she didn't read it the same way she read it when she was a teenager or even a young adult. She read this book with the eyes of someone who is a 50-year-old woman who's been through a lot of life and seen a lot of new things and read a lot of other books, had a lot of other experiences. And yet she remembered what was so special about that book when she first read it as a kid. And she saw again wisdom in that book. It was a different kind of wisdom, but it was still worth her examination and worth applying. She still laughed at some of the funny parts in this book, and she still held it to herself like she did when she was a kid and said, I love this book again, but in a different way than I ever loved it before. And for the rest of her life, she would occasionally go back to that book and read it and see something new in it each time. The title of this series, Meeting Christianity Again for the First Time, is clearly a riff on the Marcus Borg books. Marcus Borg was the author of Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, Reading the Bible Again for the First Time, and The God We Never Knew. His whole approach, some of you know about Marcus Borg. We did a little series on Marcus Borg last fall. Marcus Borg's whole approach is taking the old book off the shelf, a book that might have been neglected for many years, but reading it, encountering it, experiencing it again with a new set of eyes, more mature eyes, and being able then to not read it in the same way we read it before, but to read it in a way that brings who we are today to bear on the text, so that the text that was once so lively for us and then went through a very dormant phase in which it was neglected by us comes alive again. The key word here being again. I don't know if you have ever had such an experience with a person, a book, or a faith that it's so or a game or a pursuit, a hobby, a place And it so enthralled you at one point, and then you kind of went away from it. And then you came back to it and experienced it again as if for the first time. Some people say that this is what intimate relationships are about with children, spouses, or parents. We have experiences at the beginning with them, and they're usually highly charged, right? And then the charge can kind of dissipate. And what you thought was so cute about that person you met and married becomes annoying. Present company excluded. And but then a little bit later, you come back to that relationship, to what attracted you to that person and the fact that you were together in the first place. And you remember. And it's not exactly the same relationship, but it's infused both with that naivete at the beginning, but also the wisdom of the years. And you appreciate it again as if for the first time. This is Marcus Borg's whole project as a professor. And this is the approach that I hope we will take together as we enter this phase of learning, meeting Christianity again for the first time. So rather than Jesus, Bible, or God, we're taking the whole kit and caboodle, Christianity, which is a very broad topic. That's why we're spreading it out over a number of Sundays. And I'm inviting you to approach it as if you had never approached it again, knowing, however, that you already have had lots of experiences with Christianity. And see what there is for you today. The Christians, we assume we know Christianity, right? If not because we knew it as children, but Christianity is very much in our culture, in our families and in our neighborhoods and TV and movies and books and politics.
And volunteer work.
Volunteer work. Christianity is in the air we breathe in what you might call the West. Western civilization, Western culture, Western literature, etc. And we have all had, even if we weren't raised in the church, and I don't presume that we were all raised in the Christian church, but even if we weren't raised in the Christian church, we have some impressions of Christianity going back to probably about the age of 3 on up. We're not going to pretend those aren't there. We're just going to kind of step back from all those impressions, assumptions, conclusions about the Christian faith and take a balcony view and say, what is all that? And is there more to this Christianity thing that maybe we were never exposed to? And how does it all look to us now that we are a little bit older? Not presuming to call anybody in this room the O word, old. I'll call myself that. Mature.
There you go.
Some may be more new to the faith than others, but we all do belong to a church that is Christian, by which I mean, by the way, one of the assumptions we'll get to in this hour together today is that there isn't one thing called Christianity. Christianity is many things, and I would argue there are many Christianities. So, however, we belong to a Christian church, by which I mean you're going to hear about Jesus, you're going to sing about Jesus, you're going to pray about Jesus. Jesus is a reference point in our church, for good or for bad. That's part of the identity of Winnetka Congregational Church. So to some extent, that's a label that fits for all of us who are members of this church. Some may consider themselves Christians, but in this study, but who have never really thought or haven't thought for a long time about what that means. What does that word mean? What is the faith all about? Or you've not thought about it for many years. Others may not identify readily with the label Christian. And there's a lot of reasons why that label may make you feel like, I'm not sure that's the right label for me. If so, I understand that, and we will suss that out in this study. And yet, even if the label doesn't fit comfortably with you for whatever reason, we nonetheless welcome this opportunity to examine why you feel that way and see if and how the Christian faith for you might be reclaimed, renamed, reimagined, and renewed for you. That is a big hope for these next few weeks, so that the Christian faith may, as you blow the dust off of it, it may have some new life to it through our discussions and your own thoughts and contributions to the conversation that you didn't know was possible. I would like to think that's possible. Again, this is Borg's project. For Borg, all his books are based on his own biography. When we did our study last fall about Borg, that's something that came across to me, is that he grew up as what you might call today a fundamentalist Christian. I think Missouri Synod Lutheran, I think, was his flavor. And as a youth, he began to question it. And he quickly discovered that questions are not welcome. And he left the faith. But then he came back in a very powerful way as a scholar and then as a teacher, rediscovering Christianity. And I think that this is a threefold path that many people follow when it comes to religion. They believe it naively as children because your pastors tell you this, your Sunday school teachers tell you this, your parents tell you this, your friends, the culture, it all says there's a God, there's Jesus, of course. And then teenage years, young adult years, you say, what? What? Jesus did what? And this is important. Why? But look at what these Christians over here are doing to each other, to the world, the views they hold. I don't want to be a part of that. You start to back away. What happens is a lot of people never come back. Their mind is made up. This is Hogwaller. There is no need to come back and re-examine something I've already made my mind up about. Borg's work passionately invites people to re-examine with your brain, with your experience, but also with your heart in a brand new way. So we don't need to talk about Marcus Borg anymore, but he brings a more metaphorical, but still deeply personal, spiritual, and action-oriented form of Christianity, as opposed to the literalism that he experienced as a child and that turned him off and has turned off so many people. That's his answer, if you will. But I think that's a good pattern. It's like he calls it pre-critical naivete, criticism, and then he calls it post-critical naivete. It's kind of like, let's pretend that there's power in the story, just like we pretended that there was power in the story when we were children. Except we know it's a different kind of power. Maybe you've done plenty of questioning and never come to terms with Christianity. If so, I understand that, and we want to be sensitive to that. Or maybe you came to terms with Christianity some times ago, but you're ready to take yet another look at it, another run by it, and see what is new for you, since the faith journey is always ongoing and unfolding. We are never done. We are never done. My life took a very significant change in my faith direction just 5 years ago. And you would think, a lifelong pursuit of religion and spirituality and ordained ministry, like I'd be done at some point. And then I exposed myself to a brand new way of seeing religion, spirituality, Christianity also. And it has invigorated my own spirituality and faith. So if it's true for a pastor, I'd like to think it's true for anybody. And if you can't talk about Christianity in a Christian church, where can we talk about it? So we approach this topic with sensitivity, care, and respect. Let me explain why. A person's faith is often dear to them, and it can be upsetting to have basic assumptions questioned with new information and perspectives. Very often when you talk about these things in a church, some people will say, "Are you trying to drive me away from my faith, Pastor? I thought you're supposed to be strengthening my faith." Believe me, I've heard this. Some people are just offended with the idea that by talking about what Christianity is, you're implying that my faith or my Christian formation to date has been inadequate or wrong somehow. And people will take offense at any kind of exercise like this. And I want to be sensitive to all these possible outcomes. Some may have been confused by aspects of the faith in their life and felt inadequate or unfaithful because they didn't get it. And feelings of shame or embarrassment may be present. Mark Twain said, "Faith is believing what you know ain't true." And a lot of people have had this in the back of their minds for a long time. Like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. But I can't say it. I can't admit it. And I like the church. And yet they live with this internal, unexamined tension inside. It's like, I don't believe it. And yet I show up every Sunday. I give my money to the church. I volunteer for Rummage or whatever. And there's an internal sense of disconnect that they've somehow learned to live with, but it's never been addressed. A conversation like this brings that out from beneath the surface onto the surface, and that can be kind of unsettling for people. I want to be sensitive to that. Others have been hurt by Christianity. I have plenty of friends, queer and otherwise, who have been plenty hurt by the Christian faith. And not only the ones we might deem more conservative or fundamentalist, literal, but even by liberal churches. There's plenty of hurt when it comes to religion, and talking about this can raise those feelings in people. Some kind of talked about this, and yet others, I'm hoping, may have the smiley face here in the graphic and say, finally, I've got a chance to go deeper and be more honest about my real feelings about the faith and my own questions. Here are some norms and values for our conversation in this series. I really want this to be a safe space where we are free to say what's really on our hearts and minds, to feel it, express it. No holds barred. I've been doing this my whole life, basically, talking about religion, being in churches and so on. I think I've heard it all. I think I've said it all. I think I've believed it all. Nothing can shock or offend me. I can't speak whether anyone else will be shocked or offended by something someone says, but whatever it is, you can go there with me. It's all good. It's not that I don't care. It's that it won't trouble me. It really won't. That's really the kind of church we are. I think we're well positioned in the liberal Protestant movement to welcome the most unorthodox view, to welcome it, and not to try to convince somebody that, oh, that's coloring way too far outside the lines. That makes us the kind of church we are. Part of our spiritual enrichment motto says, or purpose for being says, independent thinking welcome. And what Marcus Borg most missed from his childhood was that sense of independent thinking. It was more from the pastors to the confirmands and the children. I have the truth. Let me impart the truth to you. And what he missed was the opportunity to say, yes, but. We are the church of yes, but here. So whether you want to question whether Jesus actually existed, literally walked on water, rose from the dead, was born but to a virgin, it's all on the table as far as I'm concerned. I, as facilitator, really have no agenda other than to give you the chance to explore this question for yourself. What is Christianity? You may come away more Christian, less Christian, the same kind of Christian, a different kind of Christian, but I'm not trying to get you to think like me, the Pope, Billy Graham, Martin Luther, or anybody else. This is not indoctrination, but an opportunity to revisit and explore the tradition and make it possibly come alive for you to sing in your spirit and your soul in a way to make it more believable again, believable in terms of trustworthy, to get your arms and your heart and your mind around, more life-giving. The goal is for you to come away with your own understanding of what the faith of Jesus is all about by doing your own thinking, rediscovering, re-examining the rich resources of faith, and encountering resources, ideas, and practices that you may not have even known about in the Christian faith. I mean, we think, again, we kind of know all about it. This is a big, big world called Christianity. And there's a lot there that I think a lot of us have never even encountered, even if we're lifelong Christians. As I said before, there is not one thing called Christianity. There are many Christianities, and ultimately as many Christianities as there are Christians. You will hear new voices, you will meet new groups, you will have the opportunity to try new practices, and you will be challenged. And this isn't just about beliefs. A lot of people in the West especially think that Christianity is all about beliefs in the head. Marcus Borg again said beliefs are highly overrated because it takes us out of what really matters, which is our will, our hearts, our inner selves, and kind of detaches the head from the heart. They say this is the longest 18 inches that there's ever been from the head to the heart. We want to be about, in this process in the next few weeks, bringing head and heart together and the way we live in the world. So I'd like to promise you that this conversation will be relevant. We will not just be talking about things in our heads or things that happened 2,000 years ago. I always want to make it relevant to the world we live in today, and it will be personal about each one of us as individuals and what's going on, not only in our heads, but also in our hearts. Are you bored yet? I'm getting there. That's a good question, Eleanor. How many weeks is this?
Years.
How many years is this? No, it's not years. Not years. Another value is humility. We're talking about religion and God here. And as much as I think I've got more, I'm on a better basis now than I've ever been about this. Anytime you think you're sort of there, and you've got the right language, you've got the right paradigm, you've read the right books, that's the dangerous point, because that's when you start to preach and assume that your approach, because you've got it kind of figured out, your approach is the best approach, the only approach. When we're talking about ultimate things, the ground of being, as Paul Tillich called it, being itself, not a being, but being, existence, consciousness, the universe. I think humility is in order here. And humor. Humor should always go with humility. We cannot cover everything, even though we're going to go on for some weeks here. I'm getting to that point, Eleanor. At the end of this time together, you may say, yes, but we never talked about. So I can't promise we're going to cover everything, but your input, especially today, next week, the 24th, and the 31st, the high holy day called Reformation Day and Halloween. Your input will help design what the following weeks will cover. We hope to set a baseline. That is where you are at home and in the room, where you are regarding your thoughts, feelings, and experiences with Christianity from as far back as you can remember to today. Give you a chance to examine those things, not only your thoughts about them, but your feelings about them. I have feelings about my home church that I grew up in. I have thoughts and memories, but I have feelings, mostly good. I hope if you have feelings. So we're looking at thoughts and feelings about where you are, but you will have in the next 3 weeks an opportunity to name them, even starting today, then see by the time we get to the end of this time together, how they might have shifted for you. Thoughts and feelings about this thing called Christianity. I'll be asking you in these 3 weeks to engage in some thought experiments. For example, what if you were hearing about this thing called Christianity for the first time? You were the proverbial visitor from another galaxy. What would you want to know about it? Or, number 2, if you were to set an adult confirmation curriculum at Winnetka Congregational Church, what should it cover? And most importantly, where would you start? Because like any work of art or a song or a knitting project or anything else, where you start has a lot to do with where you'll end. So the starting point of this adult confirmation curriculum, I'm going to ask you to do this and even do it in writing. Yes, there will be some writing. And then we'll put our minds together to hear all the different starting points. I'll be listening carefully these first three weeks because there is more to come. We're starting with the first 3 weeks. We do have 2 further units after these 3 weeks, very broadly planned. But what I hear in the first 3 weeks will depend on what we put on the scaffolding for those subsequent 2 units, 7 weeks each. I will lead you the first 3 weeks and then start engaging other voices and leaders. We have a world-class seminary down the road from us right here, Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. We also have the great courses, which we've used before. That tends to be more academic than heart-oriented, but still we can help bridge head and heart with those great courses. The great courses will deal with things like Christian history, ideas of God, who is Jesus, the Trinity, all these things that do come up as we discuss Christianity. And we might even bring in some pastors or other spiritual teachers who are really very skilled at helping people connect head and heart again. At the end of the day, it's not just changing beliefs or examining beliefs. I promise you also that if you weren't confused before you started this journey, I'll do my best to make sure you are confused by the time we conclude. That's how learning happens. There must be cognitive dissonance. For old things to be examined, they need to be shaken up. They need to be dislodged. They need to be interrogated and deconstructed. Now, you may end up building that thing right back up exactly as it was, fine. Chances are, though, when you start pulling out the blocks, there's a collapsing that happens. And again, that's not comfortable, but it gives you the opportunity to say, okay, how do I build this back up in a way that really reflects who I am, what's going on in the world today, and our shared commitment to this thing called Christianity. My bias here is that the old book still has value. The old book here is not the Bible. It's the whole Christian enterprise. The whole thing still has value, especially when we make it our own for our own generation. My denomination, the United Church of Christ, has a preface to its constitution that says it is the responsibility of each generation to make the faith its own in honesty of thought, word, and practice. I love that. But still, that's really the spirit of congregationalism, I think. The Puritan fathers, when they left Leyden, England, to set out on their journey to the New World, the Plymouth Plantation in Massachusetts. John Robinson said, "There is yet more light and truth to break forth from God's holy word." That's the spirit of congregationalism, is that the revelation is always ongoing. Revelation is ongoing, and our journey of faith is always unfolding. This is an opportunity to do that. What are your thoughts, reactions, concerns, feelings about all that?
It's exciting.
I think we have to again take a point at, again, I mean, when you see this as a series of blocks of ideas and thoughts, you know, you were talking about structure, which has to be decomposed and then rebuilt. I just think we need to pick some points, you know, or some parts of Christianity and make some comments on those. Otherwise, I mean, you have to have some format, I think.
Yes. So the first 3 weeks, I'm going to be listening very carefully to you and taking notes during these initial writing exercises to really hear from you what's important to you. I'm going to give you an exercise in a moment, but any questions about the whole project?
Yes. So is that where we're going to start? What's important to you? Assuming we are from another galaxy and we land here, don't know anything. What would our first questions be? Knowing nothing.
I just want to give you a chance to react to all that verbiage from me. Anything else?
What if you don't know?
Say more, Vince. Don't know.
As far as like what, I don't know, because you're like, maybe your view of religion changes from day to day, or and over time it evolves, and you know.
Yep.
So it's different, you know. Maybe today I feel a different way than I did yesterday, or.
Yep.
Amen.
That's okay.
And what happens if you don't know at all?
I don't think.
Where do I start? Sort of. I mean, you talk about that game, Jenga. I have a very small set, little pieces of blocks. I don't have a lot of them.
Good. So.
But the thing is, why are you here?
Oh,
Why are you here?
because I like building blocks, but I like history. So I really would like to, if I landed here, not knowing anything, I'd like to know, well, what did you guys do in the past?
So
That seems to me important.
let me be transparent and tell you the very broad topics for the next 2 units. The first unit is God. I think it's only 7 weeks. There's a lot there. There's a lot there about Christian history, Christian theology, and our own experiences and questions. Can we do 7 weeks on God? I think so. The next 7 weeks will be on church history, foundational beliefs, radical beliefs, different Christian groups, different Christian perspectives. And again, each time will not just be, here's some facts and information, but how does this resonate with your inner self? So those are our 2 very broad units. So there will be information, but information has value. And the value is ultimately determined by the receiver of the information. And that's my goal here. You know, in my other life, I am a spiritual companion. I don't know if you all know that I have another life. I'm part-time here at the church, and I'm a part-time spiritual companion. This is what I do with people who have questions about religion, spirituality, and so on, meaning of life, the meaning of their own life, I ask questions to help draw them out about what's important to them, what their beliefs are, what practices would be helpful in developing their spirituality, and so on. So that's what I'm doing with you over a course of time. But you can't do that with Christianity without presenting some ideas here and there. So for example, the Trinity. Egads, the Trinity. For a lot of people, they go right away to the formula, the language. God in 3 persons, God is 1, God is 3 at the same time. And at some point, they had a fight with a youth minister who said, well, it's just true. You got to believe it. It's a mystery. I don't know what it means. and there was rebellion, and you left the church. And if anyone says the word Trinity to me again, I'm done. Don't just stop. There's a whole, so here's my point. I want to talk about your experiences with the Trinity. I would also like to bring in some other viewpoints about the Trinity that may, again, make you wonder, oh, well, maybe I don't believe in the Trinity the way I thought I did, or I used to believe in the Trinity until you brought that up, Jeffrey. Or maybe this enriches my understanding of the Trinity in a brand new way, so that when I have to sing Holy, Holy, Holy at Winnetka Congregational Church, I won't stop at that verse. It talks about God in three persons, blessed Trinity. So that's an example of what we'll be doing together. Is that helpful?
Oh, yes.
And the cross, we'll talk about that. Is there just one Christian interpretation of Good Friday? No, there are many. And yet a lot of us react positively or negatively to the cross, assuming that we are all talking about the same thing. When in fact, Christianity has never agreed on exactly who Jesus is, what's the meaning of Good Friday, what's the meaning of Easter. There's always been a rich conversation, and I would like to introduce you to some of the richness of that.
I don't know if I can form this, but you have just described the world according to Christianity and all the doubts and the beliefs. What about the world that has no Christianity? And, well, what I'm thinking of is the Indian world, the American Indian or other indigenous ideas. And they do not include, the missionaries wiped them clean of some of those ideas. But so there's a conflict.
Right. So
I don't know where to begin on that.
I was hoping.
Well, I do know. I'm not.
So again, I'm listening. I'm listening. Even now, before we do a written exercise, I am listening to what you want to address. 100 years ago, this topic would not have been addressed except to say, let's send missionaries.
Yes.
Cleanse.
50 years ago, liberal Christians would have said, maybe there's a brand new way of thinking about this. Even the Roman Catholic Church thought about this question in a brand new way in the Second Vatican Council. Today, there's a wide range of approaches to this question. And because you said it, I'll make sure it's in part 2 or part 3. Because I think it's an unavoidable question of Christianity is fine. How do we live this Christian faith in a multi-religious context, which also includes people who have no interest in religion at all, which is today about 25% of the American population.
The nuns.
The nuns, N-O-N-E-S, not the ones with the funny
I
hats.
remember the.
Okay.
When you brought that up. The nuns.
I'm going to give you a pad of paper and a pen. Remember, we're trying to engage heart and mind here. Heart and mind. So like a therapist, I'm going to ask you to do some free association here with this simple question. When I say the word Christianity or Christian, what immediately arises in your heart and mind? When I say the word Christianity or Christian, what immediately arises in your heart and mind? Answer from the gut. Do not do a quick scan of the Apostles' Creed and write it down. Well, maybe that is your gut. I don't know.
When I Google that word,
Again, no right answers, no wrong answers. There's just your answers. You can share in a moment or not. If you do share, it will help me think about our future course here. Okay, I want to give as much time as we can. We've got 10 minutes to any of you who would like to share.
Christianity to me is a group. Christian is an individual. That's it, 2 words. I know it's too, I thought we were not getting that much time.
If other thoughts come to you, you are free to write them down
Okay.
and share them. Somebody else.
I wrote, structured beliefs for all, but not for me, maybe.
And someone else?
I had 4 bullets:
Okay, Vince.
Christ, faith, religion, and spirituality.
It's a way of life, and the Christian is the person that lives their life. The Christian is the person the individual that lives their life. I guess Betty is robbing off me, and I'm robbing off her because we're in the same building.
Yeah, you and Betty think alike there.
But she's way somewhere, and I'm down here.
Yeah, you got a vibe going on there.
Okay,
Yes.
these are teachings of compassion.
Christianity, the person who is Christ, a revolutionary movement, making of Western civilization, and a focus, I guess, a little bit like no other, of love and forgiveness.
Christ, the person.
Yes,
By person, can you define that?
a human being,
A human being.
which makes me think about a lot of things. I guess, is there another religion which deigned to claim that for a few years, God was here with us? Not another, but just one of us.
I'm writing the theological term incarnation.
Thank you. I should have said that.
You know, I guess I thought of it as a dichotomy.
A dichotomy. Say more.
Well, on the upper hand, giving, kindness, love, community. And on the other hand, condemnation, narrow, and cleansing.
So giving, what were your happy words? Giving
Giving, love, kindness, community.
and your other words? Condemnation,
Condemnation, cleansing, narrow,
cleansing, cleansing.
and narrow.
Caring. And I wrote that in much larger letters.
Uh-huh. You're expressing yourself. Caring is in large letters.
Worldwide in 2,000 plus years.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a particular interest of mine. So I think you might hear some of this in the subsequent weeks. Having been a missionary, having visited the Christian church in India, in Costa Rica, in the UK, Vince and I spent a week with our partner church in the UK. I feel that very deeply, the universality of the Christian church, because
There's something very special about Worldwide Communion Sunday.
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Just for Christians.
Worldwide, yes, I'm talking about the church. Yes, I am.
Well, the church, now you say you're talking about the church, the Christian church, but there are 2 billion Muslims.
We're not talking about them right now.
No,
Well,
however, I'm very aware of them.
I think that takes us back to Nancy's earlier comment, which I wrote down because I'm trying to listen. And that is, what does it mean to be Christian, to be the church in a world that is multi-everything, including people who have no interest in any of this?
And what does the word church mean?
Yes, see, basic things here.
Yes.
So, Greg or anybody else, tell me if I'm wrong. I think
Christian begins with CH.
I think church is the English word that eventually goes back to ecclesia. Ecclesia in Greek, I do believe, means gathering. So what is it in Spanish? Does that sound a lot more like Spanish?
Iglesia.
Right. How that got to church, and it's Kirche Kirche in German, which is more closely, you hear church in Kirche a little bit more than in Ecclesia.
Which has a C and an R sound again, like in.
Kirche, Kirche.
So the,
What's the root meaning of ecclesia? Is it not assembly or gathering? It's neutral. It's not religion specific, as I recall.
That's a Greek word.
Yeah.
the word ecclesia, klesis means a calling, so something that comes from the calling.
Called together, perhaps. So to answer your question, Eleanor, the word church, though, by convention, is used for gatherings of Christians. And if you were to ask a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, a Buddhist, do you just want to use, why don't you just use the word church? What would they probably say? That's because that's your word.
Oh, I got something. What was the original word for Jesus or for Christ? Is it similar to ecclesia?
It's the only organized form of religion in the world, I think, that makes points in the scriptures of value for every human being, be they child, woman, man, of whatever color or whatever stripe.
Points of value. You
Yeah.
mean dignity?
Equally valuable.
I'm going to add that to your responses about what is Christianity. May I? Okay. That the Christian scriptures
Yeah, and it makes points in various parts of the scriptures that, like, suffer those little children.
point out equality
Yeah, absolutely.
of
Quality of all humans.
all humans.